Welcome everybody to this March 18th Emergency Board of County Commissioners meeting in reference to the virus that's going around. If you have any electronic devices, please silence them at this time. If you must take a phone call, please step out in the hallway. As you probably noticed, the room is set up differently. We're trying to comply as best we can in this facility to meet the CDC recommendations as far as separation and of a room and people. Let the record reflect all county commissioners are present. What I'd like to do first is I'm going to ask Ms. Holly Holt with the Health Department to come forward to bring us up to speed. As I mentioned last month or this past Monday, this thing is fluid. It keeps moving, and day to day everything's different. And so that's the purpose of this meeting, is to address the recent changes. Ms. Holly.
Okay, thank you. I don't know if it's good to be here this afternoon, but it's nice to see you all this afternoon. We did have a change in our status in Walton County today, and there was some information that was sent out that I believe is the reason we're all here today. We have had our first confirmed case in Walton County, and this is a non-Florida resident. So that's information I can basically give you today. You know, we do follow the HIPAA guidelines with confidentiality and things like that. So as far as any other information, I cannot give you that today. But I can let you know that case was confirmed today, and it is with a non-Florida resident in Walton County. Wanted to just give you a little bit more of an update. We are continually testing in this county for more tests that are going through. There's been 314 total Florida cases confirmed as of this morning. I'm not sure about this afternoon. We get our notices a couple of times during the day. So I did want to make sure that you all were aware of this late news for us, and just to kind of, to let you know that we've actually sent out a press release in the last 30 minutes to talk a little bit more about what we're doing in our community for due diligence with this, and how we're testing, what we do when we find a confirmed case with contact investigation, how that works for us. So that information was sent out about 13 minutes ago to the community for everybody to see. And then just basically to let everybody know we are still following the same guidance that comes down from the CDC where testing is concerned. We're asking individuals to touch base with their local providers about testing. If their providers feel like they're meeting the criteria and want that individual to test, then if they're not testing, which we are seeing a lot of providers are not testing in our community, that is something I really am trying to work, try to figure out some of the reasons and some things to be helping, because we need more hands on deck. As this situation moves forward, we don't know what tomorrow holds. We don't know that all the ones that we've tested are going to come back positive. We really don't know. So what we need to do now is look at how we're going to mitigate the situation and to minimize the way that things are being given from one person to the next. So where that's concerned, we do need hands on deck. We need to make sure that we are testing. We're finding out who these individuals are. We're doing contact investigation and hoping to minimize what's going to be going on in the next few days, weeks, months here in Walton County.
Okay, so excuse me, at the present time, now that it's been confirmed, is it your agency that will go to that victim and then backtrack, see who's been in contact with that person?
That is our health department that does that. We have an epi nurse. We have actually added some more of our nurses to that to help us with these contact investigations.
Okay, are you at liberty to say how many victims have been tested and just waiting on the results from Walton County?
I don't even have that information on me, so I couldn't even share that with you if I wanted to. I can say we have been testing.
Okay, thank you. Any questions from the board for Holly?
Holly?
Yes.
Are we only testing people with symptoms?
The CDC recommends that we test people with symptoms But I will tell you that if you go through your local provider and they feel like that they actually meet the criteria for what they are looking at, and right now this is the screening criteria. It's persons who have had close contact with a laboratory confirmed COVID-19 case, persons hospitalized with acute lower respiratory illness of unknown origin. So that person, you don't know if they're in the hospital and they have lower respiratory illness and they don't know that they've come in contact with somebody, but they're testing negative for flu, for strep, some of the other things, they will test for COVID-19. History of travel to or from an affected geographic area with widespread community transmission, history of international travel or a cruise, greater than 65 with chronic health conditions and immunocompromised persons. So those actually can be individuals that are tested also, and you can go through your private provider. If the private provider is not testing, you can call us. There can be a prescription that's given to us, and then we can actually test that individual. But it's going to take a lot of us to work together to test the individuals in our community.
And what's the turnaround time on those testing?
Well, that's the question of the century. It started out being shorter than what it is now, due to the high impact of testing that is going on. I think 1, 2, 3. So we knew something in about 3 to 4 days. We're hoping definitely to know something. It would be great to have something back in 24 hours. We're not seeing that right now. It could be up to a week, but for right now, about 3 days is the time that we're seeing in testing.
And how is that test administrated?
It is a collection of swabs that is used in your nose and your throat. And then that's sent off. And a lot of people are getting confused about collection and testing. Collection is what you do to collect the sample. Testing is sending it off to be tested. And it's like a two-part system. For us, when we collect, we send to the state lab.
Okay, good.
Holly, at this point, I was noticing on the news there's some concern of rogue kits out there that aren't really the actual test kit. Where can people go at this point if their provider is LabQuest testing, Walgreens? I'm hearing a lot on the news, but because I'm not affected, I don't know what to tell people to do.
The main thing is to tell people to call their practitioners, their providers, and ask them if they're testing, if they feel like they've come in contact with somebody or feel like they meet that definition of the things that I just mentioned. If their provider, my thoughts would be a great world if we lived in this, is basically the provider would see the patient, because even if it's not COVID-19, they may have flu, they may have strep, to rule out some of the other things. If it's not those things and they feel like they meet that criteria, then do the testing. If they cannot do the testing, they can give us a holler, come with a script if they meet the criteria, and then we'll do the testing at the health department. But if a person is actually goes to the emergency room at Sacred Heart or Health Smart because they're really sick and they feel like something's not right, they'll go through the ER for their examination, and then they'll do a COVID-19 check if they feel like it's necessary. Of course, if the person's well, like most people when they go in the ER, sometimes they turn around and come home. They don't have that, then they'll go home. If they're sick enough, they will stay in the hospital just like normal.
Okay.
Do you see a time in the very near future where testing will be more available for everybody? One of the things we're hearing is the disease does not affect young people like it affects older people, that young people may not even have very many, if any, symptoms, and but they're still infected and still carriers. So is there and I know you might not can even answer this, but do you see that happening in the near future? I know in some countries they're trying to test as many people as possible.
I do believe that's coming, and actually I heard of a lab in our community today that's actually doing some of that testing. I just found out about that this afternoon.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Holly.
Holly, when we met this morning, a question I proper to you was, can we determine how many ICU rooms we have, along with the number of respirators that are available in the county? With the heart?
Okay. Yes, and I did investigate that. For Sacred Heart, there are 22 ICU beds and then 11 ventilators. In Healthmark, there are 2 ventilators and there are 6 ICU beds.
Obviously, if the worst case scenario, we'd be running out of space pretty quick. I would make an assumption then, as a worst case scenario, that the federal government is making preparations to have additional ICU units be able to pull in here or build, or and with ventilations and all that. Is that your understanding of what they're trying to work towards?
My understanding that they will be getting some resources coming down, and that's where we work very closely with Jeff, with emergency management, because all of these community resources, and I know it's kind of unusual when you deal with the county health department, we funnel up what our needs are through a certain software program, and then with emergency management, they're helping us look into our community to see what the needs are, be it PPE, personal protective equipment, some of the other things that are needed, or it could be like we're talking about, we're needing more ventilators. We do have some extra ventilators in our region. These are things that we've been preparing for a while, because we have been working so hard with hurricane preparedness that it's kind of helped us with some of these things. But like I said, we'll be working very hard with Jeff to send the mission request up in hopes to get some of this equipment that we need down.
Okay. Piggybacking off what Tony said there a minute ago, the young people that seem to be immune, but that doesn't mean they're not carrying. And we got an enormous amount of spring breakers in this county right now that one has purported to have said, I just stay away from old people. I'm not worried about it. Well, I think that's a wrong attitude to have, because you could very well be carrying it. You might have been exposed before you even got here. And then you're going to pass it on to somebody else, even other young people that may take it back to grandma when they get back home at the end of the week. With that being said, Ollie, is there anything else you want to add to this? At this time, I'd ask you to hang tight in case any more questions come up, please.
Okay.
Okay. What I'd like the board to decide, you've probably been inundated like I concerning different things that are concerns of the people throughout the county. Obviously, we got the beach that is a primary one. I've been lit up with the beach activities and what's going on down there. But we've also had some that have a concern that whatever we do to maybe address this, and they live up here but work down there, that it's going to impact their ability to take care of their family. They might lose their job, they might be laid off. So for the public's concern, this is not an easy decision for this board to set up here and make, because it may satisfy your need down there, but it's going to impact somebody else somewhere else in the county. So with that being said, I'm going to open it up to the board if you
Mr.
have
Chairman.
anything dealing with this.
Mr. Chairman, could we ask the South Walton Fire Chief to come up and speak for a few minutes? He's in charge of our lifeguards, and I would like to ask him some questions concerning this.
Okay.
I
I know that, but okay. Chief, come on up.
Good afternoon, Commissioners.
And I forgot to announce earlier that when you come up here, please identify yourself and spell your last name for the clerk. I think they know you, Holly.
Ryan Crawford, RyanCrawford, Fire Chief Administrator, South Walton Fire District.
Don't you ask for him? There he is.
Chief, are you taking any precautions? What is your, I mean, you have employees on the public beaches. What are your thoughts?
Yes, sir. So we publicly implemented multiple protective actions beginning really, well, a week ago, but even firmer protective actions yesterday with our facilities. We've locked down our facilities to the public. We're now denying access to the public. Obviously, we're still serving the public, but in an effort to try to keep that sterile environment around all of our fire stations. We've been communicating regularly with all of our employees, and we've implemented, those the social distancing precautions, if you will. We're field daying all of our facilities daily. Just trying to take every measure of protection we can to make sure that we protect these critical resources. Specifically to your question regarding the beach. It's somewhat problematic. We have a lot of men and women that obviously we're a service provider. We serve the Board of County Commissioners as well as the Tourist Development Council. And we have a lot of men and women in lifeguard towers up and down the beach right now. And it's a little bit of a mixed message when we're conveying that we're doing all these things internally, but I really don't have any good solutions on how I can protect them out there as they're sitting there in those large groups of people that you mentioned, Mr. Chair. So I don't know what the solution is to that. I don't know if it's an alternate deployment method. I spoke with Mr. Tusa earlier today, and it's part of the reason why I'm here this afternoon was to share those concerns. Whether that we take those folks out of where they're currently sitting in towers and we put them in pickup trucks where they're a little more encapsulated, not out in the middle of the public. But it is a concern for me. As we move forward, I think all of us recognize from a public health standpoint, we are going to see a tremendous surge on our ability to be able to respond to this community. And any of these other activities that we're doing are additional burdens on our ability to respond. And I think that those should be evaluated from that perspective, whether that be from the personal protective equipment cache that we have available to us that's in limited supply right now, to being able to, to service the ancillary activities that those beaches, that require us to respond to. So that was really my point in being here this afternoon, was just to share that concern.
Tony, you done?
No, I've got some more, but let Commissioner
Just a
Bible
quick
say.
one. I was down at Ed Walton a while ago, and it looked like your towers had been pulled back more towards the dune or towards the boardwalk. Was that intentional?
Well, tis the season. We've had folks relocate our towers in the middle of the evening. So it's a little bit of a challenge. They move around a little bit. It wasn't intentional, so to speak, but we had one we discovered out in the water this morning. So, that's pretty typical. But
What kind of crowds are you seeing down on the beach? And what are they enduring? What are some of the hurdles that these guys are up against?
So, Commissioner, I drove down Scenic Gulf Drive this afternoon before I came in here because I wanted to get my eyes on what we were seeing out there. I know Mr. Toos had mentioned a couple days ago what our current occupancy was at, and in light of what we're seeing happen daily in the national news, I was curious kind of what we were seeing out there. And I will tell you, I know the sheriff and his team is working hard to try to enforce that governor's order and the separation, and they're doing a great job. But there's a lot of people out there in Miramar Beach right now on the beaches. I mean, it's pretty thick.
A lot at Ed Walton too. Got pictures, but it did look like, whether it was intentional or not, that your lifeguards were further back, and there was probably 25 feet between the lifeguard station and the first row. So
Yes, sir. I talked to our guards. I've asked them for some solutions, whether that be, create some barriers around our towers. But, I think what makes it complex is we have everything from missing persons that we get engaged in. We're trying, we're constantly trying to engage with that public education piece. And so that requires you to have that interface directly with the public. And I just think it might be worth considering, maybe in the short term, figuring some alternate way of deployment to be able to to accomplish that task, if you will, to where we're still meeting the mission, if you will, but maybe providing for their safety a little better.
Is there any thought that you had or your staff has had about pulling the lifeguards off the beach?
Well, sure, Commissioner. I mean, we've talked. I mean, I think at this point, all ideas are valid. These are pretty extraordinary times that we're living through. That I don't think that would be our first desire. I think there's, whether, depending on what decisions are contemplated here today by this board, and the status of the beach and accessibility to the beach or accessibility to the water, all of those things. I think we're resource partners, and we want to work hand in hand, whether that be with law enforcement or, but maybe it's something that's scalable. Maybe it's not. We're not, sitting at each of those public beach accesses, but we're moving around a little bit more. Or, I don't know. I think it's something that we should look at.
How would that benefit the crowds at the beach if you remove the lifeguards?
If we,
If we remove the lifeguards from the beach, how would that benefit the crowds, or how would that reflect the crowds that go to the beach?
well, I don't know that I would recommend removing the guards at this point. But I think having more from a mobile platform, where they're not just kind of out in the middle of public, if you will. Providing them that protection from that encapsulation of that vehicle, if you will. It still provides us a resource to provide a water rescue if that's necessary, and we're seeing a lot of those right now. So it's a little bit of a, it's critical that we have the infrastructure to be able to respond as long as we have people on the beaches and partaking in all the activities that go out there. But at the same time, I think it's critical that we provide that safety for our employees. We want our employees to feel, we want them to feel safe. And
Absolutely.
I don't have an answer for that. I can't put a lifeguard in a tower and an N95 mask, sitting out there for 8 hours. That's not a practical solution. So I don't know. We've told them to maintain distance as they interface, try to maintain that 6-foot distance. And that, that sounds simple as I stand here and tell you that, but that's not real practical out there on the beach, as you're moving around between, folks that are sitting in 6-foot intervals and people are asking you questions and patrons are climbing on the towers and, it's all of those things, so.
Tony, anything else?
No, that's all for right now. If you would stay in case there are any more questions.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you.
Ms. Hawley?
I was just thinking about what Chief Crawford had said, Holly Holt. I know no one wants to recommend closing the beaches. I feel sure that's probably like the elephant in the room. But what worries me, if you've looked at the map, and I actually had sent it to a couple of people, if you look at the hot spots of the individuals like in Nashville, some of the areas that people are actually, they're leaving there, they're coming into our beaches, and then there's not a whole lot we can do about it. Once they're here, everything spreads. And if you're in a beach, it's hard to keep people 6 feet away from each other. And I'm not trying to be the bad person here, but I do want you all to think about that and how that would work. I know it would be horrible for tourism, but this is a different game changer that we're dealing with. And I'm not sure, I'm not the person to tell you how that would work or anything, but it just worried me. I was looking at the map of the United States with the different hot spots, and a lot of those individuals are coming into our county. I don't know if there's anything to do with looking at how to keep those individuals out, other than closing. That would be something that I would just offer to think about. But I did worry when I saw that today, when I was looking at the numbers of individuals coming in from those hot spots. Because what will happen, people will come in and it'll just keep spreading and spreading and spreading. And like you said earlier, we don't know who actually has it a lot of times. 80% of the individuals that have it have very little symptoms. 20% is from moderate to mild symptoms. Moderate to severe symptoms. 80% are mild symptoms. So you may have people carrying it, don't even know that they've got it, think they have the common cold, those kind of things. So just food for thought. Just wanted to mention that to you.
Okay, thank you.
Real quick, and if someone is a carrier, and that's part of the problem, we're in spring break, it's the youth out there, the carrier may not know and may not have any symptoms at all. Am I right?
Very little.
And that tends to get people to not be as cautious, and why we still have the crowds on the beach. And other places are closing is the problem, and they're starting to funnel here.
I think what we're seeing is a refugee effect. People are coming from bigger cities with a higher concentration of this virus coming here to Walton County because there's not much of it here. And they want to run from it and get away from it. And I think that's what we're seeing a lot of.
I can't really say yay or nay, but I just know looking at the hot spots on the map, and I do know lots of individuals are coming from those different areas, and it could be because of what you said, but I can't really validate that.
And these are mostly drive time visitors, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
They're coming.
Probably. I can't answer that either, but I would think.
And I think the other problem we have, it's spring break, and they have a certain amount of time off, and here they are, and other large cities have closed down. Miami, Fort Lauderdale, they've closed down. They're starting to move our way. So I think it's time to make action.
It's been rumored that this virus, and you can help me with this, that it goes dormant or dies due to sunlight and warm weather. Is there any truth to that?
We have not heard that validated.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. All right, board, you've heard it, you've seen it, the emails, the phone calls, et cetera. What's the board's wishes as far as how we move forward in protecting the public and the safety of the residents here, along with any visitors? I've had some emails, I'm sure you have too, to go out here and put up roadblocks at Daggone county lines, and if you're not from here, you get turned around. That's what we ought to do. Well, that ain't gonna happen. But anyway, let's put it out on the table and figure out what we want to do, and so we don't talk over each other. Ask me first, and so I can identify everybody. Ms. Nipper.
If we minimize the amenities that are open, then we minimize people wanting to come here. It is spring break. I'll tell you, even my business, I typically do 38 tandems a weekend. I'm going to do 2 this weekend. I'm going to hurt as much as everyone else. That we must do something on our public beaches and must do something for our restaurants because the youth feel omnipotent. They don't think that this is going to affect them. But I may have an autoimmune person, a child at home, and I could transmit it to them. And that's just not fair. I'm here to protect residents also, along with business. So.
Okay, any other one? Anybody else? Well, what I want to do here is make sure we got the board's comments out. I'd like to entertain a motion.
Well, and if I may, just real briefly, I'm sorry if I can jump
Go
in.
ahead.
You know, I don't know where the discussion is heading, but if there is going to be a discussion, you know, dealing with the beaches, I have some suggestions about how we could proceed. But
Well, I don't know either what's
Right,
going to happen
right,
here.
fair.
But before we go there, could we get Jay to come up to the podium just a second?
Jay? Where is he? Oh, okay.
Before I ask you this, I don't think the public knows because I didn't know until a little bit ago, but TDC has suspended all advertising. So
Correct.
we're not advertising, we're not asking people to come down here,
That is
in other
correct.
words. Is that?
We suspended all advertising as of last week, and actually, we stopped about 2 weeks ago pushing a strong message to come here. It was more of, hey, look, it's a pretty day in South Walton. So we haven't been really pushing, saying, hey, come here, for about 3 weeks now.
What's the occupancy right now?
Right now, it is at 86%.
Any anticipation of what it's going to be in the next couple of days?
So it's 86% for this week. Next week, it's 67%. The following week, it's 55%, and then the following, it's 70%. So these are all pretty much in line with normal spring break numbers. This week's actually a peak. It's well beyond where we were last year this time. And I attribute that to what Commissioner Nipper said earlier. Other places are closing. I mean, you can't go to Miami Beach. You can't go to Disney World. And so we're a domestic drive market, and so people are getting in their car and they're driving here.
Go on a cruise.
Yeah. Any other questions?
I just want to I just want to know what the status or what we're looking at before we.
What'd you say next week was, Jay?
Next week is 67%.
Do you feel the fear of this virus will deter any of these spring breakers from coming down to our area?
I do. I think now that it's announced that we have it here, I think that could be a deterrent to people to want to come here on vacation. And obviously, whatever action the board takes, if y'all decide to close the beach, obviously that would have an impact as well. But is it going to totally stop everybody? Probably not. I mean, people just, they seem to kind of have a cavalier attitude towards this virus, which I don't quite understand, but anyway.
Have you done anything in your efforts to let other people know from outside our area that we have this virus?
We stopped all of our marketing efforts, so no. But we've been communicating with our partners as far as what's going on with what action the board has taken, what we're doing to kind of just let people know what's going on. So, we've been posting on our webpage, just closures, what's going on with restaurants, if they switch to a takeout only type of a situation, or like in the case of Seaside closing, we did mention that. And so we've been pushing out some messaging like that.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to lean towards closing the beach. I mean, we need to start this conversation. We can't keep tap dancing around it. If no one else is going to put information out there.
Okay, can you hold that
I
for
will.
just
I
a
just
second?
want to, the elephant has got to talk.
I know.
Roll Tide.
Go ahead. I'm going to allow legal to talk about it,
All
because
right.
we've had some discussions about it.
So what I would suggest, I'm sorry if the microphone, if you guys can't hear me. What I would suggest, if there, is a motion or some direction from the board to explore closing the beach, is that you give me and my office direction to draft an ordinance addressing closing the beach. We could draft that tonight, and then we would continue this emergency meeting until 9 a.m. tomorrow to adopt any ordinance necessary to close the beach. It would be an emergency ordinance, and that would require 4 members of the board to vote in favor of the ordinance, because it would not follow normal notice procedures. But I just wanted to
Okay,
throw that
perfect.
out there as an option to handle it as quickly as possible.
All right, well, depending on what we did today was to determine whether I'd continue to move this emergency meeting until tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock at this location. So with that said, her motion, she can restate it, and we can go from there?
Oh, I don't mean to make I'm not making a motion. I'm just saying we need to talk about closing the beach. Okay, I
think-
apologize.
well,
I didn't
let's
mean
have
it
it
that way.
open
I
for
mean, we
discussion.
just need to talk. It's
Do we
open
need
for
a motion,
discussion.
though, to discuss it? What,
We-
do we need a motion to?
I don't think so. I
Okay.
think I'm
All right.
opening
Well,
it
I
up for
agree
the
with-
board
I
to
agree
have
with
that open
Commissioner Nipper. I
discussion.
think
So
we need
just,
to-
We need to talk about it.
okay, who wants to talk first? Ms. Nipper? Yeah, I know how you feel. You want
Right.
to.
I understand we've got about 8 miles of public beach. I think this will help with the social distancing. Rosemary, I think, and Seaside and other areas have done a great job of. Sorry?
We've got 3 miles.
Three.
Three.
I'm sorry, 3, and then the others is State Park.
Arts.
Right. Some areas have done a great job, and I think this will help us do social distancing. And I know it's going to hurt. I know it's going to hurt. I'm telling you, I probably will have to close this year, too, because of this. I know it's going to hurt.
Okay. Danielle or Tony, you want to go next, or just come up the line this way?
You go ahead.
All right, Tony.
I worry about the economic fallout if we do shut the beach down. These employees that we've had, all the small businesses in Walton County hang on for dear life throughout the winter after our season's over. And to shut that down, it could be a major concern for them. I mean, they won't be able to pay their rent. They won't be able to pay Chelco. You know, this is their time to shine. And we're smart as humans. We're smart. We know what this disease is. There's a lot we don't know, but we know common sense to help combat this. And I just like to keep that in mind.
Tony?
Well, this has been an extremely nerve-wracking and stressful time in my life. I've just had some health issues, and the old saying, "Man plans and God makes his decision." So apparently, I can handle this. I've struggled with this. I'll be honest with you. I'm a pro-business guy. And I'm sure Commissioner Nipper has probably gone home many times mad at me because I'm a pro-business guy and voted that way. And she thought maybe I was wrong in that. And we've always had a very friendly, cordial, and very workable relationship. I'm not picking on you,
No
but
worries.
you're the only one that's been on the board the whole time I have, and Commissioner Chapman. So my record on pro-business stands. I'm the biggest pro-business person on this board. However, do we want to wake up a week from now and there's 120 cases? Do we want to wake up and somebody from Nashville calls and says, my grandson came down when y'all didn't close the beach and he brought back this coronavirus, and now my husband of 50 years has it and may not make it? I am torn to pieces over this. It is the worst, hardest decision I've ever had to make in my life. Everything in my background, everything in my heart and mind says, is it going to make a difference? And, we're talking about 3 miles of beach. But after driving through Seaside yesterday and seeing them having closed their beach, if the people in this room could have seen the mass amount of teenagers gathered in one place, it would have shocked you. The thought that they were passing that virus from one to another was just heartbreaking. There was nowhere for them to go except to the shops there. Now, Saturday, they're closing those shops. But what they're not doing is they're not closing all their beaches, and neither are all these other resorts. So there's still going to be plenty of people coming down here that are going to pass this virus around until the state or the federal government does something about it. But unfortunately for us, I rode down our public beaches yesterday too. And as Commissioner Glidewell says, Ed Walton was chair to chair. So it's frightening for me to think that we could do something and might should have, and we didn't. Right now, if we take a vote today to work for Sydney and them to work on the ordinance, I'm going to vote for working on the ordinance. Tomorrow, I may feel different. Tomorrow, we may have 50 cases. There's some things that bother me, and this is why I asked Holly these questions. And I'm in the category. Listen, I'm a heart patient. I'm the poster child for getting this disease, and that's scary, But I've lived a long, great life. I've got 3 great children, and I'm having grandchildren now. I don't want to go, but I'm not thinking about me. I'm thinking about everybody else. But I also have to think about, as Commissioner Nick said, the economic impact on the people, especially in North Walton County. And I can tell you, I have a lot of friends that are in the restaurant business. A lot of friends, close friends. And right now, they're probably watching this and saying, okay, we're going to get you when you come back, and we're going to chew you up. But still the matter is, this thing in a week may be a whole lot better, but what if it's not? What if it's 50 times worse? So I'm going to vote to have the ordinance if it gets, and it will get a second, Ms. Nipper, if I have to do it myself. But I'm going to vote to support the ordinance to do it. I'm going to go home. I'm going to pray all night long to come up with the answer that God feels like I should come up with. And I'm going to vote what I feel tomorrow. But as of right now, I think we all of us need to think overabundance of caution.
Mr. Chairman?
Yeah, go ahead, Danny.
The 1 out of every 3 people in this county work in tourism, and so we have a workforce of about 35,000. So you're talking over 10,000 people directly affected if we shut down tourism, which is basically what we're talking about doing. You can go around but that's what we're talking about doing. Those statistics or studies show that about 75% of the people in this country live paycheck to paycheck. So what we're saying is that 8 to 9,000 people that are your neighbors and mine don't get a paycheck next week if we do that. That's serious business. And I hesitate to do that because most of those people, or a significant portion of those people, live in my district. They're my friends, my neighbors, and they're the people that I've grown up with all my life. So I don't think you do any of this lightly. And I've been getting emails all week about this, pro and con. And this isn't about money as far as some big shot making another million. This is about my neighbors and your neighbors feeding their children. And so, it's a sober decision. However, while I was not in favor by no stretch 3 or 4 days ago, I did go down to the beach today, and I did see nobody's paying any attention to what the president and the governor said. Nobody. They're out there playing volleyball 20 and 30 to the... And, we gave every chance to abide by the rules and to abide by the law. And we got all sorts of people who are just basically thumbing their nose because they don't want to abide by the law. And as Commissioner Anderson just said, if we know that people aren't going to abide by the guidance that we put out, and we sit here and let it go on anyways, and don't do everything we can to stop them, and it turns into something that is really bad, can't live with that either. Especially when the Department of Health is sitting here pretty much telling us what we need to do. I regret it, and I wished in a perfect world we could trust people to do what they should do, but I don't really have any confidence that they will. And that's not our local people that are going to suffer. That's the people who are down here. Our local folks are going to suffer for it. And Commissioner Nipper said she might have to close her business. That's serious to me. I had a lady that tell me this morning that they'd lost 2/3 of their business in Defuniac since the weekend. That's terrible, and that breaks my heart. But sometimes for public safety, you have to do what you got to do. But I will say this, I am not in favor of closing just the public beaches. If we're going to do it, let's do it whole hog. Let's say we're going to close the beaches and be done with it.
Okay.
One more thing, and I'm not even sure we can close all the 26 miles. I wish we could too, but as you can tell from what I said and what Commissioner Glidewell said, and Commissioner Nipper, this is, and Commissioner Nick hadn't had his say yet. I'm interrupting him, but this is killing us up here. This is the most painful thing that's ever gone in my life, and I lost my dad when I was 14 years old. This is, as Commissioner Glidewell said, taking people's jobs. But I also think that we're 2 or 3 or 4 days away from the state shutting down everything, restaurants and everything. So I'm heartbroken over this. I haven't slept all week, and I'm sure my fellow commissioners haven't slept all week. But I want everybody to understand this is not something we have taken lightly. We have all struggled with it. we can't talk to each other about it because of the Sunshine Law, and we haven't talked to each other about it. But it's, as you look up here, you can see this is 5 people that have the weight of the world on their shoulders. And the decision, whatever the decision we make, is going to be the decision we live with. And whatever happens, we want you to know that every one of us, our main concern are not only for our tourists, but mainly for the people of Walton County. And it's been a real trying time for every one of us, and it's not something we take lightly. And this is a job we were elected to do. So we're not going to shirk our responsibility. You may agree with us, you may disagree with us, but what we're doing is what each one of us think in our heart is the best thing to do.
All right, Trey, it's your shot.
I thought I already had mine, but I'll.
You got something to follow up
Yeah,
on?
I do, yeah. You know, it's a tough decision to make up here, but I've had a lot of bad stuff happen to me over my lifetime, and I didn't know it was going to happen. What I'm telling you is I don't live in fear. I didn't fear those unknowns, and there's a lot that we don't know about this virus, and I feel it's, I might be a little premature to shut this beach down just yet. That's my view. Has there been any other beaches shut down in the state of Florida yet? Where are those at?
Miami, Fort Lauderdale.
Dade and Broward County.
And if we do shut this down, and that looks like the direction it might go, how do we police that?
Well, I met with the sheriff this morning, and he's got it handled, whatever decision we decide to do.
Well, the sheriff is here, and I was going to call him up here in just a minute. Jay, you got something you want to?
Just real quick, in response to Commissioner Nick's question, so Collier County announced that they're going to be closing their beaches and Brevard as well, and obviously Fort Lauderdale, Miami Beach have closed theirs, and we kind of all know about that already at this point.
And my understanding is Okaloosa County is meeting tomorrow.
We're meeting tomorrow morning, and I believe they're going to be discussing the same thing we're discussing here today.
Okay, anything else, Trey?
I'm good.
All right.
Mr. Chairman, can we talk about restaurants? Because I'm getting a lot of emails, and I would not feel comfortable leaving here today.
I understand where you're going
Gotcha.
on that, and
Because
I would like to ask the sheriff to come up because he and I and others were present this afternoon on a conference call with the governor, and it dealt with restaurants and bars and a few things. So, Sheriff, please.
Well, I've never been known to be soft-voiced. I don't know if maybe I've done something today. As the chair spoke about, we were on a conference call this afternoon with Governor DeSantis and other personnel from across the state discussing the executive order, particularly how it related to the bars and restaurants and what he was trying to clarify what that wording was. It's a little bit of confusion last night, and we're trying to make sure that we're all not only doing the right thing, but doing it in the appropriate spirit, the tenor of the way these things should be conducted. I feel like after that call that we had a little bit of direction on it, what they were trying to accomplish, which is dealing with it more in a licensure status than it was in a direct law enforcement status. I'll put a caveat to that. There is a caveat to that, which is if you are willfully not complying, you are willfully attempting to circumvent that that executive order, that would be direct law enforcement action. So the reason I mention that is because there are some questions about businesses altering to become serving more food, for instance. As any of you in the restaurant business are familiar with, there's no licensing. There's many different types of license, and it is a complex issue. So we will lean heavily on Department of Professional Business Regulation in regard to how these licensing should be handled. But from a sheriff's office standpoint, our direction from the governor was primarily absent willful violation that we would handle this as a regulatory issue. Questions in regard to the...
Did that answer your question, Commissioner? Basically, he's letting DPR is going to take care of these licensing issues and complaints with restaurants and bars. The sheriff will still have a little hook in there, but it's primarily I took it as he was directing the state agency to oversee that. They got a monumental task. I think we got 4 inspectors for 8 or 9 counties around here.
That was a question I actually specifically asked him. So the question came from me to the governor in that regard to make sure that we were compliant and doing what the spirit of that order was as well too. That was his direction to me from that. So.
And the spirit of the order being 50% of the tables
Yeah.
occupation?
Yes, that's correct, 50%. And basically what you have is an occupancy license, and our fire chiefs, both Chief Crawford and I have discussed this, and Chief Beatty here in the north end, about monitoring the occupancy. And so, essentially if you have seats for 100, you can only have 50. I mean, that's kind of the short answer. I will say that a lot of our restaurants, my experience today and last night, a lot of voluntary compliance. Even a couple of restaurants that we had some questions where we thought they possibly were in violation, speaking to the owners, they said, listen, whatever it takes to be safe and to be in compliance with the order, we're going to do it. So I don't feel like we've had anyone that is directly trying to contraband that. Now, to be clear, even though I said it's BPR, if you were directly attempting to, you're just going to do it, you get what you get. And that's a short way to say we will take enforcement action directly if that happens. So the follow-up question was in regard to.
Yeah, you've heard the discussion they had concerning the beach. And we had the earlier discussion about it too. So would you, is this thing working again? Y'all better move. I'm liable to sling it right back there. Okay, let's try this. But you heard there's some discussion that going to that, possibly closing the beach. Cause a lot of activity for you to address. Do you want to speak to that briefly? Sure. Like we had earlier discussion on.
Sure, that may be the understatement of the year. Pragmatically, what we're going to try and do is deal with this as a matter of education and to get voluntary compliance. And if you'll pardon the analogy, it's a little similar to speeding. We don't catch every speeder, right? But you don't stop doing it because you can't do it. You reach out, you make contact, you try and do it in a customer service mindset. You try and work toward gaining voluntary compliance. There is, 26 miles of beaches, and so if you're closing the beaches to the public, what we will start doing tomorrow in coordination with your staff as well, if that's what you decide to do, is working, having people to access points, so that, you don't want people to carry a cooler all the way down there and then find out that a deputy comes up and says, hey, you can't do this, right? So between trying to stop people at the access points and then working in zones on the beach, and what we would do basically is from daylight to dark, go up and down the beach, talking to folks and trying to get this thing worked out. But I'm not going to, I said to the chairman, I think everybody, this is a yeoman's task. This is not going to be easy. But as I said to you before, we will support you in this endeavor.
Is it going to be any easier than enforcing the mandate from the governor?
I mean, you basically cannot enforce the current mandate.
That's my point. Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
And there was a question that was fielded to me yesterday. From my mandate, my ability to close the beaches comes out of an Emergency Powers Act, and really that was designed for it to be over a short period of time. And my advice of counsel and my reading of that was you have an elected body who should determine whether or not this is appropriate. They were elected by the citizens of Walton County, as opposed to me making a unilateral decision based on what is not necessarily an imminent threat.
Okay, any other questions for the sheriff? Thank you, Sheriff.
Would you rather have it all or nothing, or specific parts, or how do you want it done?
And Commissioner Glidewell, if I get some general direction from you guys to draft the ordinance and bring it back tomorrow, I can commit to work with Sheriff Atkinson this evening to make sure we have an ordinance that, gives him what he needs for enforcement.
Thank you, Sheriff. Appreciate it. If you'll hang a little bit longer, I appreciate it. Now, y'all had your comments?
Hurry up.
things that's been done since this room became headliner is an attempt to try and prevent the spread of this thing across this country, where it is totally out of hand, and hundreds or even thousands of people will die from it. As I said earlier, government cannot protect everybody without the people protecting themselves and doing what they need to do. I can't go out there and follow everybody around and make sure they stay less than 10 in a group of 6 feet apart. There is a responsibility of the public to do that. Now, personally, as much as I'd hate to see it closing the beach, I think at this point in time, with the influx of different folks outside the area that come in from some of those high impact areas, that whether they have the symptoms or not, they are coming down here anyway, and they could not only infect our residents, but even some of them take it back home with it. So with that being said, I'll entertain a motion as to what you want to do as far as allowing legal to work out the verbiage of this emergency ordinance for discussion tomorrow morning for finalization.
I'll make that a motion.
I'll second.
Got a motion and a second.
And to be clear, so we would continue this emergency meeting to 9 a.m. tomorrow here at the courthouse.
Right, okay. Now, we've got a motion and a second on the floor. Is there any public comment?
If you have a public comment, the board is certainly interested in hearing that, but I want to make, if possible, a couple of things clear. Regardless of what this board does, it does not relieve individuals of a social responsibility to do the right thing. And it's going to take, the sheriff cannot go and take his resources and make sure no one's on the beach. Restaurants, nobody can make sure that every restaurant in this county is complying with the governor's order, nor the bars and the nightclubs. So when you come and make your comments, keep in mind that if you've got a specific question about a specific situation, there may not be an answer to that. Because I will remind you that there is a responsibility of everyone in this room and everyone in this county to do their part, to do the right thing, to protect the well-being of our citizens and our visitors. I can tell you, these guys have struggled like I have not seen 5 people struggle in a long, long time. You should tip your hat to them, whatever they do, because I tell you, they have taken this very serious, and rest assured I know, because my days have started way before daylight and then way after dark, working with each of them to try to help come to the best conclusions. And that's what they're going to come to in their mind, is what they think best serves the citizens of this county. Now, again, as you come forward and make your comments, keep in mind that they don't have the answer to every question, because there's not an answer. So your neighbors are responsible, the folks around the corner from you are responsible, and each of you have a responsibility to do the right thing to help this board protect the citizens and visitors of Walton County. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, I've seen a couple hands go up. Young lady there in the front, if you want to come forward, please. And then, is that Bagby? And Jim behind her. Just identify yourself to the clerk, please.
Which microphone? This one here?
The one there, land. Yeah, pick that one.
Okay. My name is Heather Duncan, D-U-N-C-A-N. And I come here from AJ's Restaurant. I was here a few days ago and spoke to you. So I just would like to remind you that the economic impact this will have, not on the people visiting, but on our employees that we employ, our residents, our friends, our neighbors, is going to be huge if we close the beaches. all have a choice to go to the beaches, to go to the restaurants. We have that choice. I just want to remind people with this pandemic, more people died of the flu. So then you're going to ask me, how many of you had your flu shot? We have a vaccine for it. How many of you have had it? So I just want to remember, a lot of this has been sensationalized. We've had 7 Florida deaths from this. We've had more die from the flu. So I just want to kind of put it in perspective. When you guys are making that choice, deciding to close our e-commerce, close the beaches, close everything, that we just came off of a long winter. Spring break is when we start to make our money, a lot of us. So once the beaches are closed, yes, it's going to stop people from going to the beaches, but guess what? People are still going to travel. They're still going to come here. So we have a responsibility, like today, keeping 6 feet apart, the social distancing. At our restaurants, we remove the bar stools. So just want to keep that in mind. I do have a question for Ms. Holly. So the restaurant worker screening questionnaire that came out from Mr. DeSantis, in that question, one of the last questions is, have you experienced or presented any signs or symptoms of COVID-19, such as fever, cough, sore throat, or shortness of breath? If you answer yes to any of those questions, at that point in time, you cannot come work in the restaurant. But you have to go get tested. And the employees, since they're not high risk, they're not able to get the test in this county or any other county. So this is what I would like to bring. I know my time is up, but do you mind if I continue? Because I think this is serious.
30 minutes.
What are we going to do about getting more testing sites? And how are we going to, how does that look? Because at this point in time, if they answer yes to this questionnaire, they no longer have a job.
If you want to come forward. There might be others that are interested in that question, if you don't mind addressing that. This is a little out of the norm for the way we do the meeting, so just bear with it.
Okay, and I'm going to answer it to the best of my ability, because we do know that there are going to be more test kits coming available. And remember, the 2 parts to the test kits. There's a collection samples and the actual testing. And that's what confuses people. But there are going to be more test kits coming out. That is something that I know that it's going to be funneled down from the federal government on down. We've been getting that information through the Department of Health. So that is coming. We'll have more. Did that answer your question?
The problem is yes to a fever, yes to a cough, so they're not at risk. And when they go in, they're being denied. Sacred Heart won't test them. No one will test them.
Well, and that would actually be coming down from CDC guidelines for us to do.
Right, Ollie, I think what it is as a mandate by the governor's office. I don't know how much health department had involved in that, so you might want to run that up to them. But I can't answer that question for you, why they set that criteria for the testing and all that. So I don't think you'll get to what you're looking for today.
Yeah.
All right, thank you, Holly. Appreciate it. Mr. Bagby? Jim, we'll probably have to use that again.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Commissioners, Jim Bagby, BAGBY. Tough situation. Haven't seen people this afraid since the oil spill. Think about it, because it was the same kind of fear that was permeating this county, particularly the south end, when that happened. And I know nobody in a leadership position wants to be seen as not being proactive or decisive. You want to be seen doing something. Even if it's wrong, you want to be seen doing something, and I understand that. I don't think you're doing anything wrong, but I know you want to be decisive. And everyone wants you to be decisive, and they want you to act. I think the question is, what is the responsible action? Because as y'all have discussed, there's a bunch of competing values here. All my staff live north of all the housekeepers, all the maintenance folks, everybody lives north of the bay. All of them. My rental manager lives in Bay County, and then, of course, I live in Destin. A couple of things, and I agree we should err on the side of caution, but a couple of things to consider. We've talked about enforcement. You know, if you want to close the beach, close the beach. Don't close 3 miles of beach. You know, you're not solving anything with closing 3 miles of beach. If you want to close it, and that's to everybody. I have permanent residents in the property I manage. They go to the beach, they all have pets. They all like walking their dogs down on the beach, you know, at the appropriate time. But you need to cut them off too if you're going to cut everybody off. I shouldn't be able to go down. You shouldn't be able to go down. I think it's an enforcement issue, part of it. You know, you talk about Ed Walton, that's one of our managed beaches. The vendor, they're setting up, you know, side by side by side. The vendor that's managing that beach is not doing the job, or we haven't given them the proper guidance. We ought to use the sheriff. We ought to use code enforcement. We ought to use the beach ambassadors. We ought to use the lifeguards. There's a way we can enforce this separation on the beach if we want to. It's not easy, you know, but it can be done. There needs to be some thought also about not just, you know, 9 o'clock tomorrow morning shutting down the beach. We've got people driving in here from Texas, you know, who made their reservation, you know, this time last year for their spring break this year. They're going to get here at 9 o'clock tomorrow. We're going to tell them, sorry, the beach is completely closed. So I know you want to take action, but think about how you implement that action. Think this problem through and think the solution through. A couple of questions for Ms. Hawley. For y'all to ask, I guess, have we looked at Okaloosa's capacity? Because they have 4 major hospitals, counting the one at Eglin, that have resources. Are we coordinating with them? Because a lot of folks that, you know, work here may live over there. And
With Ms. Holly after the meeting, and it'd be better offline.
okay. And then I had the same experience as the sheriff at lunch. I went to the Perfect Pig. Everybody was spread out. You know, people are trying to do the right thing, and I know y'all are trying to do the right thing. If we can help you, let us know.
Is there anyone else? Any other public comment? Okay, come on up here, sir.
Brett Blazer, Blazer. Just wanted to add that I do believe that closing the beaches is going a little too far because of the economic devastation it will cause. We're basing, you know, these crowds we're seeing off of what is just naturally a peak week of spring break. We've already heard that we're going to see, you know, 20% less next week, and that's after we're only, you know, about 24 hours. I believe we'll see more and more cancellations. I think we'll be well under 67%, I believe it was. Also, I'd add that, you know, when the state does that, you know, they made that and they offered small business loans, you know, to help people out. You know, Walton County can't do that. So, you know, I think following the state guidance will effectively shrink the number of people that we see here. And further, you know, talking about, you know, shutting the beaches, again, we already have in this county a big legal issue over customary use, who owns these beaches anyway. I think that's just another big legal mess that you could find yourself in. Again, I think a certain amount of legal cover goes with following state guidance, and that would be my recommendation.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Oh, I didn't see your hand there, Megan.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Megan Harrison, Harrison. Just a couple of things that we're hearing as both businesses are contacting the chamber as well as people who are coming in to visit our location. If we close the beaches, people are still going to come. People, as long as, you know, there's curbside service available at restaurants, as long as there is retail available, as long as the bike paths are open, as long as people can still rent a bike, people can still rent a boat, people can go to the bay, they can go fishing, people are still going to come. And if we close the beaches, we're going to risk putting a major enforcement issue on our law enforcement, I feel, but it's also going to impact our locals as well. So if we close the beach, and let's say in 5 weeks, whenever occupancy drops back down to 10%, and I, as a citizen, as a mother, wants to take my 3- and 7-year-old down to the beach, and I can't do that because it's closed. And so just a lot of things to factor in as we are, making this decision, which I'm on the fence personally, not in a professional capacity. I'm on the fence. I have parents who fall into the demographic of at risk, and it's a huge issue. But, we've got people calling our office telling us, hey, we contacted rental companies. They're not offering any kind of refunds. They will allow us to, transfer our reservation to another time, but who knows when we can do that. We've spent thousands of dollars on airfare. We've spent thousands of dollars on accommodations. And so I think that these are things that we just have to consider. So if they've spent these thousands of dollars and they can't get them back, chances are they're going to come. We've seen it with people who live here this week, people who booked ski vacations, ski resorts have closed, people have still gone to Colorado. They've still gone to enjoy this time with their family, and they're finding things to do that are open. So just want to make sure you guys are thinking about the bigger picture in terms of how this is going to impact not only our businesses, our people who work in the tourism industry that is so huge to our economy, and also are gone. If we mandate restaurant closures and we mandate beach closures and things have simmered down a little bit, how are we going to still be able to support and make sure that our businesses are thriving and surviving?
The rest of you that's out there, if you're going to have something to say, you better get your hand up quick, because otherwise I'm shutting it down after this gentleman right here.
Jeff Talbert, T-A-L-B-E-R-T. The bigger picture of public safety.
Thank you, sir. All right, seeing no other hands up, close the public sector of this. I would like the board to consider, since we have a motion second on the floor, that maybe you would consider putting some type of sunshine date on it, like 60 days at the most at the present time, and at the 30-day mark, if we have the reduction in occupancy, maybe this thing is starting to taper down. We don't know, it could go up, it could go down, that you consider that part of your motion, that we have a sunshine of 60 days with a 30-day review at the conclusion, if that's what passes out.
Mr. Chairman, I don't have a problem putting the sunshine date on it. I have a problem waiting 30 days because things could change.
It didn't state it right.
Okay.
At the 30-day mark, upon passage of the ordinance, 30 days later, a review, everything stays status quo, it just stays there at the 30 review, and if there's any change, then we can address it.
Well,
Commissioner,
yeah,
I'm sorry
I would
to step in. So, since it's an emergency ordinance, and if we're still under a declared state of emergency, you can rescind the ordinance without the same notice procedures that we would typically follow for an ordinance. I do suggest that we put a time limit on it, and then we review it periodically. But if circumstances dramatically change and we're still under a state of emergency, we can rescind it without following the same notice requirements we do for other ordinances.
Could we say it automatically sunsets at the end of the emergency?
No, I would suggest we put a timeline on it and we can review it. But again, if things change and we're still under a state of emergency, we can rescind it at that time.
Because our county may rebound quicker, and we definitely want to get our tourism back up and running, so.
All I was asking for is the time at the end of this, and then between now and then have the opportunity to go ahead and review and see if there's any additions, modifications to whatever we put in place for the rest of the time that it's effective.
So is the 30-day a hard 30 days? I'm misunderstanding.
Necessarily, it doesn't have to be
Okay.
hard. I said it would be 30. We may have to come back. I may call you and say, Monday, we got to meet again because something significant really took place over the weekend. So that's why I've let the board on notice. This thing is moving so much that you're gonna get a phone call like you probably got today saying be here at 4. So I'm just letting you know that, okay? And like most have said, Tony and the rest of it, it's been a heck of a decision. I've got 8 hours of sleep in the last 5 days. Because you're sitting here thinking about it, worried about it. It affects so many people. But we gotta make a decision. So Sid, for legal, we have a motion and a second that we will postpone a vote until tomorrow to allow you to review the ordinance. And so we would be in recess until tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock.
Did we vote on the motion and second?
No, we haven't yet, but we can.
Yes.
Okay, we got a motion and a second on the floor. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Motion carries. Motion carries. So we stand in recess until 9 o'clock tomorrow to review the draft of this ordinance. And thank all of y'all for attending. Appreciate it.